Welcome to Worldview Matters, discussing controversial issues, discerning current events, defending biblical Christianity. No topic off limits. And now, here's your host, David Fiorazzo.
Hi, friends. God bless you. Thank you for watching and for sharing the podcast. I also want to thank a few new friends that have been donating recently. David from Appleton, Wisconsin. Thank you so very much, brother. And also, we've got Sigri from Brainerd, Minnesota. Thank you guys for your donations. And I don't need to go down the list because I just did that a few days ago. But I think we're up to, is it 16 states? I don't know, something like that. So praise God. And we appreciate any donations, but prayers to keep things going, okay? Get us out there. Today, very important topic and guest. We've got someone that's local here, Jeff Wagner. He is a podcaster. He's a documentary film producer. He hosts the Patriot Review podcast and came out with a phenomenal project a few years ago called Breaking the Oath. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Plus, we're going to be talking about the January 6th narrative and an update there on some people that we should be concerned about. But Jeff started his constitutional conservative activism after 9/11. Along with most Americans, he believes that we are all one race, the human race. Amen. He also, in December of 2019, he was diagnosed with a chronic incurable disease and became disabled. So we're going to talk about that because for him, every day is a challenge, but he keeps pressing on and fighting this battle for truth. He says this: "I'm one American who will not give in. Join me in ensuring our freedoms are here for coming generations." And I just want to bring him in right now. Jeff Wagner, welcome to Worldview Matters. Good to see you, brother.
Thank you so much, David. It is an honor.
Yeah,
I love being with you.
Yeah, we met about a year and a half ago, I think.
Sounds right. Yeah.
One thing before we get going, on your website, I love this quote from Abraham Lincoln. Let's start there. "America will never be destroyed from the outside. If we falter and lose our freedoms, it will be because we destroyed ourselves." And you said, and I'll let you further comment, "I'm horrified to see President Lincoln's prophetic words inching into reality. The Marxists have saturated our government, institutions, and even our churches." By the way, Jeff's website is redbloodedpatriots.com, redbloodedpatriots.com. So Abraham Lincoln, important quote, because we've not been attacked or taken down militarily, but we've been weakened, and there are people right here in our own country trying to destroy this great former republic under God. Go ahead.
It's absolutely correct. And Abraham Lincoln said another quote that's one of my favorites of his is, that often I find myself on my knees because there's no other place to go. And so I believe that this country is under attack from within, just like people will demonize Senator Joseph McCarthy, who was from Wisconsin.
Yep.
But he, it turns out, was correct. And there's a great book, Blacklisted by History, that deals with that whole topic, and McCarthy in particular. But when we look around and we see all these things that once we would have thought, well, these are common sense. People reject this flatly out of common sense. For some reason, that is not happening. I believe that the reasons why are directly related to, number one, our education system, which has changed quite a bit, and number two, I believe the media is what used to be. The media used to be the so-called fourth branch of government, right? Yeah. They keep government honest, but it's turned into a propaganda arm.
Yep.
And that is
of the left.
Yeah. And that is why you see so many people like me and that never ever dreamed in all of their wildest imaginations that they would be in a situation where they're doing a podcast and determining what the legacy should be for them. And for me, you hit my legacy. The best legacy you can leave is freedom for the future generations, whether your kids, your grandkids, whoever. That is the real enduring legacy because Americans, I think, tended to be too focused as a nation just on wealth and growth and things and objects.
Entertainment and leisure.
Yeah, exactly. And I think more people are waking up to the fact that, hey, we took this all for granted for a long time. And now we're the ones responsible to do something about it.
Yeah, I think we're paying the price for taking our freedoms for granted. And as you can see by the direction of our country, the moral decay, the government power that seems to be, there's no accountability or very little.
That's for sure.
There's just a lot of problems and a lot of issues. I want to go back briefly to your disability and share a little bit about that, because I think it's a good example of someone who has health problems or health challenges, and you're still committed to doing what you can to fight for this country.
Well, in 2019, like you said, I was diagnosed with this disability, and it was a year in finding out what was wrong. It just commonly referred to as painful bladder disease, right? It's kind of like a Crohn's disease of the bladder type of thing. And it's painful every day. I've tried everything under the sun to try to relieve it, but what it was a blessing. And I really look at it that way, because it pulled me out of everything I just talked about, right? Taking everything for granted and focusing on, more money and getting raises and all this stuff. And it slowed me down to the point where I realized that God had given me an opportunity to do what I'm passionate about. And then I had that conversation with myself. I look around, and one of my brothers is really big into, family history and that whole thing. And what I realized is that 3 or 4 generations down the road, we're pretty much forgotten, right? So what better legacy is there, really, than to leave freedom for people? And that's what led me to do what I do. And I got contacted by Frank Speech, which is Mike Lindell's channel, asking me to be on. So I go down to this Moment of Truth conference in Missouri, and I'm with 1,200 other content providers. And every one of us, we'd sit down and we'd have discussions, introduce each other. And I was absolutely amazed by how many people had the same story. Oh, I was doing something completely different, never thought I'd be here, and God led me here. And that's what I feel happened to me, that it was being led to what I do, what I'm passionate about, and to try to leave that legacy.
I can relate to that to some degree. I was doing radio for many years and also writing. I'm an author. I've written books. And something shifted right around 2020 after COVID-19. Or is it COVID-24? I forget what it is now. But something shifted. The attacks on our religious freedoms became more blatant when churches were told, you're inconsequential. You're what do they call it? Non-essential.
Non-essential, deplorable. Favorite term.
Attacks on our religious freedoms and attacks on church. And I thought our government is doing things that we've never seen before in our lifetime. Then with the election, President Trump, anything you'd put out on social media, whether that be about COVID or whether that be about vaccines or that be about President Trump or something like conservative principles, we were starting to get censored, shadow banned. I'm still shadow banned. In fact, I wrote a new book, and my very first interview was with a pastor in Colorado, J.B. Hickson at Not By Works. The first interview was pulled off of YouTube within 3 hours. He was just asking me about my book. So we understand now we cannot take these freedoms for granted any longer. I want to go back to, first of all, I'll see you with Mike Lindell on your website.
Yeah.
Your picture with meeting him. I've got a chance to speak with him once.
He's an
do
amazing
a
man.
podcast with an amazing man. What a testimony, huh?
He is awesome.
Yeah. But a lot of people are trying to do this, and it's great. There's a lot of outlets. By the way, Jeff is also on blessednewstv.com, Blessed News TV, but his website is redbloodedpatriots.com. That's where they can get your podcast, correct?
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
I do a vlog and a podcast. Everything's available there. All my shows are downloadable as well. So.
Okay, so let's go back to how we met, Breaking the Oath. Jeff did a documentary called Breaking the Oath, unauthorized, about the medical community. I'll just let you share what it's about. Our mutual friend is Scott Shera, Scott and Cindy Shera. I met you at the premiere in De Pere, Wisconsin.
Right.
And Jeff, share any updates on that or what led you to do that Breaking the Oath documentary.
So as I was starting my show out, Scott was one of the first people that I came across to do an interview with, and his story was so compelling because And here's a family who lost their 19-year-old daughter. She had Down syndrome. The whole story behind it is an absolute nightmare. They had power of attorney, but they still weren't allowed to be part of many of the decisions with her care.
Yeah.
There was a do not resuscitate, commonly called a DNR, that was placed upon her without the family's consent.
Yeah.
And she was treated like so many COVID patients because the COVID protocols, if you go back and remember at that time, they would completely disallow the use of ivermectin and hydrochloroquine and other things that have a long history of working.
Yeah.
To the point where they even fired people, they pressed charges, arrested people for issuing that medication. And there were many doctors that lost their livelihoods because of that. So there's this whole story around this tragedy with this family of these protocols being used to basically speed up a person's death.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it was. But the turnover in the beds created enormous profit. And
can you talk a little bit more about that? I mean, like there's thousands of dollars for a ventilator. Was it $13,000?
No. The whole process is about a $300,000 deal per patient.
For being in the hospital for what length of time?
Well, until it was more based on what treatment was given, right?
Okay.
So there'd be, because they were using charge codes like they always do, right? In a hospital, or you go to visit the hospital and you'll see a charge code, and that code is directly telling you what treatment they got. So if they would hit a certain code, they get X number of dollars. So you just look at the total care, and the average was about $300,000 per person. By the time they got in there and died, they went through the ventilator process. They went through the end-of-life medications, and basically they were, I don't want to ruin the documentary, but they were the medical practitioners. Many of them knew that what they were doing was the wrong thing,
yeah.
And they still went ahead with it because of fear. And that's really what the favorite weapon of these globalists that we see in our nation today is fear. And
the media helped drive that.
You bet. And that's what we all have to just make a decision and say, no, they're not going to make me afraid.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do what the right thing is.
Yeah.
And I'm going to man up, and I'm not going to allow them to do it to my family, to my community, whatever.
Because there will be a next time.
Absolutely.
There will be a next time. And by the way, if you love your neighbor, you're not going to stay silent about these things, and you will not want them to, walk the plank, so to speak. I mean, what they did early on with COVID, Jeff Wagner, when they were putting patients together in nursing homes in New York, and I think Washington State, Illinois may have been there. There were several.
Michigan,
Cuomo, in Michigan, and no one was held, to my knowledge, no one was held accountable for tens of thousands of elderly nursing home patients.
That's right.
And that was the start of it. And you're going, what? How did they think that was a good idea? I still don't understand that. Do you?
I do, because the whole idea of globalism is married with environmentalism. So you have the globalists and the environmentalists working together, and part of their direct stated objectives, if you go to the World Economic Forum website and you look at their material, part of their objectives is to have a population on this planet of no more than 500 million humans. That means that 7.5 approximately billion have to be liquidated.
Nice way of putting it.
And it's sick, but that is the agenda. It's like we have on this desk right in front of us a copy of Mein Kampf in 1936, and well, this guy, he's just saying that. He's not going to actually go through with this crazy plan.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Their plan is on paper. Their plan is to do exactly what I was talking about, and that explains exactly why we were seeing what we were seeing in the nursing homes. And this is where, I was referring to just some common sense. I mean, you have to follow the path and just come to a reasonable conclusion as to what explains what has been done the past few years. All of it, not just COVID, but the censorship you mentioned,
But that was tragic when you had families that couldn't even say goodbye. They couldn't even get in to see a family member because of protocols. And nurses and doctors, some of them well-meaning perhaps, but they followed the marching orders, or they would have gotten fired, and some did. Anyway, and by the way, you had a couple in the documentary breaking the oath. Didn't you have at least one nurse?
I did, yeah.
Yep. What was her name?
Erin Olszewski, who is Nurse Erin, right? She's been fighting this fight for a long time. Now, she was in the epicenter of it all down in New York City. Yeah. And she makes some pretty startling revelations in the film, one of which is that they had 100% turnover. The 100% COVID patients, when she started, were dead shortly afterwards. So and there's a lot more to that documentary, and a lot more to her story that people just, I think, will just shake their heads at and say, this is obvious. I mean, this is something that everybody should be aware of, but thanks to the media, they're not.
Well, let's point people to it. It's on Rumble. If you look up The Patriot Review on Rumble, go ahead and follow Jeff's page. Look for the Breaking the Oath Unauthorized. We'll be right back on Worldview Matters with Jeff Wagner.
Today's show is brought to you by Harbinger's Daily, world news biblically understood. Stay informed at harbingersdaily.com.
We're with Jeff Wagner. His website is redbloodedpatriots.com. We're talking about some heavy topics today, friends, and we just mentioned the Breaking the Oath documentary, but now we're going to shift gears in a minute and talk about January 6th and the narrative that the left is putting out, and they're demonizing Christians, conservatives, independents, Republicans, and true patriots. We'll talk about some of this injustice in a minute, but if you're watching the podcast, listening via audio podcast, help us out by leaving a 5-star review. That apparently helps our show rise in the rankings. I didn't know that. Jeff probably knows that kind of thing. But friends, go ahead and leave a great review. And then also, we're growing fast, and we would love the opportunity to partner with more like-minded businesses or people to sponsor Worldview Matters. If you're interested in sponsoring the show, go to worldviewmatters.tv and just send us an email. Let us know that you're interested in sponsoring the show. Okay, Jeff Wagner, you gave me a website on January 6th. When you came in here today, and we're going to talk about this. I also want you to share about Jake Lang, because you've had him on your show several times on your podcast. So we're very disappointed by how the government is treating people, but the media, of course, I like to call it the one-party media, the one-party Democrat media conglomerate. They're not really letting the truth get out there. They're covering up some of these facts and some of these injustices. So share whatever's on your heart.
Well, Jake Lang is sitting in prison well over 1,000 days now. He hasn't had a trial. He's not alone. I mean, that's kind of a common thing. And he's facing very serious charges. And what he did that day was he attempted to save, and did save, 2 people's lives. He attempted to save Roseanne Boylan's life. And, of course, she was beaten to death. And you
don't hear anything about that.
They don't show the video of that kind of, right? I've got video that I've showed on my show of buses being escorted with Antifa, loads of Antifa people
to the Capitol
under Capitol Police
on January
guard.
6th.
And then I've got video of the people entering the Capitol that were basically just allowed in and even waved in some cases. Yeah. And I always say this is another common sense test, right? If it's your first time in Washington, D.C., and the Capitol Police are there waving you into the building, do you think that you're going to do something illegal by going in? I mean, they're inviting you in.
Not if they're inviting you in. But I don't think a lot of the people in America, the average citizen, I don't think they've seen that footage.
I think you're right, and they haven't seen much of the footage. And you have to ask yourself, why was 14,000 hours of footage hidden and not allowed to be viewed by the public for so long? And why has so much of the evidence and the material that was used in the so-called J6 committee, why was that hidden for so long? So what I want to talk about today, though, is that you have these J6ers and the disparate treatment that's being given to them is just completely un-American. We used to be a country of innocent until proven guilty. And now that's been flipped on his head all
Yes.
the way up to and including a former president.
Yes.
And a president who was during his term that was happening to him. The things he's accused of are, it's so we have a Hillary Clinton who had 30,000 emails, destroyed the evidence, had the evidence outside, right? And then you have a Donald Trump who had the executive privilege. He had the Presidential Records Act where he could declassify anything during his term, and he did. So, I mean, we have that. But what I wanted to share about J6 was not only do these people not have trials in a constitutionally guaranteed manner, they have been subjected to and are subjected to juries that have been fed this media lie for so long that they're likely to get sentenced. And what they're doing is they try to put a plea bargain on their table, and they attach additional charges to their cases, and then they say, okay, well, we'll drop these additional charges if you agree to plead guilty and admit that you did something wrong. So they're basically pushing these people into admitting that they're guilty or losing their lives, right? Losing their livelihoods and their families and everything else. So I wanted to share a survey that was done by a company called Triton Polling, and it's very, very professional. You can read it on.
Let's give the website real quick.
Yeah.
It's J6, the number 6, changeofvenue.com. J6, changeofvenue.com. Go ahead, Jeff.
So one of the survey questions, and I'm just going to share a few. Donald Trump supporters are racist. Would you say that? You strongly agree, so on, all the way down to not sure, I don't know, right? So of that, the numbers are 69.4% of people agree. Now, I don't know about you, but every Christian I know believes that you don't see skin color. We believe that you're an American, right? To the point where I don't even like the, well, I'm a Chinese American, I'm in this American. No, you're an American, right? I mean, we're all in this
So
together.
you're not a fan of diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Not the way they use it.
DEI.
Not the way they use
Right,
it,
right.
no. So here's another one. Are you worried for your safety or the safety of someone you know because of the events of January 6th? And this is that fear element we were talking about. 56% say yes.
Wow.
And would you say J6 was an insurrection? Now, the definition of insurrection is a violent act to overturn a government. Now, I'll remind you that on January 6th, Donald Trump was president, so it's hard for a group of people to overthrow the existing government.
Someone they're there to support.
For the existing government.
Yeah, and by the way, did you already say the number? Go ahead.
So 85.8% believe that.
So that January 6th was an insurrection.
Was an insurrection.
And that, my friends, is great media marketing.
That's
That is
right.
very good marketing by the Democrat media.
That's right. So here's the question that blows your mind. Regardless of what they did, whether they were in the Capitol, outside, flag waving, whatever, anyone who participated in the events in the Capitol January 6th should serve prison time. And what do they say? 68.8%.
You're kidding me.
So I will remind your listeners, what was happening just the year before that? Did we not watch our cities being burnt down? Do we not watch
Black
people
Lives
getting
Matter Global Network Foundation? Yes.
Yeah, we watched our cities being burnt down, looting. We watched assaults,
Some murders.
some murders.
On the streets.
Yes, on the streets, and then we watched as people villainized a 17-year-old kid who was told that he was going to be killed and chased, and he defended himself. And we watched him be attacked by
Kyle Rittenhouse?
by the media.
Yeah.
Kyle Rittenhouse.
Yeah.
So I want to go. So the penalty for insurrection, treason, or committing an act of domestic terrorism is either life imprisonment or death, right?
Oh, my goodness.
Life imprisonment or death. So they asked these potential jurors in Washington, D.C., you think that'd be a fair punishment for those who participated? So the number is 48%.
That's almost half.
Are willing to and believe that people who were using their First Amendment right, which, as we know, has been taken away if you're you or me, because I was kicked off of YouTube very quickly because I was talking about COVID.
Yep.
And so you have to ask yourself, is this really something that people would do if they're adults and can have a conversation about what the facts really are?
Yeah.
Or is this...
This is communist policy, is what it is.
Exactly.
Communist policy in America.
And this is what we're facing.
Yeah.
And I want, I'd love for people to follow me and to listen to my show. We talk about this and many other topics like this, like you do. Yeah. And, I strongly believe that, you have to have a strong faith in all of this, and the faith will pull you through.
Yes.
And get over the fear, because you're not alone, whether you think you are or not. Yeah. And let's make a difference and change this.
Yes, fear is not of God, and we have not been given a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind, according to 2 Timothy 1:7. I want to go back to one more poll question. Donald Trump is to blame for January 6th. 75% strongly agree, 14% somewhat. So that's a total of almost 90% believe Trump is responsible for that whole. And that he made a speech and he said peacefully, we want to go to anyway. So just know the facts, friends. Get informed. I encourage you to go to redbloodedpatriots.com. Check out Jeff's podcast. Follow him on Rumble. Watch that Breaking the Oath documentary if you haven't yet. Jeff, I just want to thank you for your time, for coming in studio today. I'm glad we're kind of neighbors. So we will do this again, Lord willing. So thanks for your time.
It's awesome. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Well, friends, I've got a big show coming up tomorrow. We're just thankful for the guests that I get to talk to. I always learn. I'm challenged. I'm often encouraged. And I hope you are too. God bless you. And as always, keep speaking the truth about things that matter.